And why a comic book?
It's a great question. So I've always been a fan of comics. My brother was, a huge comic advocate. His apartment was like a library for comics. He worked with Marvel for
Like
years, so I
Marvel
grew up
and
on comics.
DC, or
Yeah,
like
Marvel and DC, but he actually worked with Marvel and like he had everything. Like so,
oh,
and this was like in my late teens, early 20s. I grew up on comics. I read The Watchmen immediately it came out, and these were really formative on me. They really had a big impact on me growing up. And as I started to understand it more, actually, when I was looking at it, and actually, when I was at school, when I was very young, when I was at school in Nigeria, there was a lot of religious comics that were distributed through the school, and they really had a dramatic impact on me. And as I researched it more, I saw that comics were actually one of the most powerful means of political propaganda in terms of community. It's generally recognized around the world as one of the most popular formats of that. And so that was interesting. But then also I started to look at big social issues were often addressed in comics. So for example, very few people know that X-Men was based on was a parallel of looking at racism and looking at the civil rights movement,
yeah,
where
there's
Professor
parts
X.
parts of the Holocaust actually in the X-Men as well, if you look at the origins.
Absolutely, and Captain America was very much developed as a fight, as a response to fascism that was happening during the Second World War, to corral interest around people, to give people a sense of what this war was about in many regards. And similarly, doctors, Professor X was modeled on Martin Luther King, interesting flip, and Magneto was modeled on Malcolm X, and it was all about exploring that narrative around, is non-violence or violence the right way to address otherness, difference in that regards? So, and in many ways, the X-Men stories, the films took that up, and Magneto became a victim of the Holocaust, grew up in concentration camps. So there is very much a history of comics being used to address these big social issues. And we
Right.
feel that data sovereignty is the next big social issue of the day in that regard. So
Well,